Welcome to our podcast, Talk to Me, Sister. I'm Kathy.
And I am Sarah, and we are twin sisters documenting our surrogacy journey, discussing women's health, motherhood, and all the details that led us here.
Our mission is to not only educate and inform, but to spread joy and hope through our story. Thanks for following along. Hey.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome, everyone, to our podcast.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We've got so much to talk about. And this episode today is an extension on our past episode on Sarah's cancer diagnosis. And we thought it was really important to share so everyone knows where we came from and how far we've come. Today's episode is a follow-up on post-treatment and a deeper dive into Sarah's recovery and healing. So it's also important to share our hard stuff and our traumas, but It's even more important for us to share how we overcome and how we continue to overcome. So our surrogacy journey, really when we started our podcast, has taken place several years after the really hard stuff. So it does help when we're on the other side so we can tell the story. But when you're in it, it's so freaking hard. And so we also want to give light to that and also comfort people who are in those places. But we're excited to share the recovery part, and it's a reminder of hope and redemption and that there are happy days ahead. You do have to cling to that too. And so whether we see it right away or not, we know that Satan means to take things and use it for darkness and destroy, and God uses it for good. And we're firm believers of that. And we rely on faith and trust. And it's hard to feel that when you're in it. So we're hoping that our story can remind people of that for sure. And so we're thankful for that promise of hope, but we're also thankful for science and medicine, because in your cancer journey and in surrogacy as well, we've needed both of those. We've needed science and medicine and Western medicine and modern health advances, but we've also just really believed. And I think that the mind and the body are very connected, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. So
many good points there. You just said we are thankful for the doctors and the science and all of the things, because they are anointed, and we are thankful for that too.
So Sarah's going to talk a lot today about what guided her in her treatment and what really helped her. So Sarah, let's dive in. Why don't you start off by telling us how you felt after your last treatment session?
Yes.
And how you decided to kind of move forward, because it was hard. We talked last time about how that last stint of chemo after your hysterectomy was just a really hard place for you and
really
our
tough.
whole family. So how did you feel after that, and what really helped you go forward?
Yeah. So, and I've said this before, and I said this on the last, healing and trauma, both. Healing is an ever-changing tide. And so I think that on the last round of my treatment, when the cancer came back and I had to basically start over, I was in a really dark place, like Kathy said. So, and of course today, you don't just wake up one day and you're fine. I mean, healing from trauma specifically takes a long time. You take 3 steps forward, 1 step back. So you just got to give yourself grace, because even now today, I'm still healing.
Right.
That's the reality of that.
And you can feel really good mentally and physically and emotionally for a year. And then all of a sudden there's triggers and trauma. And I think that's such a normal thing, right? Sarah, you can talk about this, I guess, at another time or now, but you still struggle with oh my gosh, what if it comes back? Or is this pain in my arm or my leg? Is this just a normal pain? And I would have never, I think about that, and I'm not a cancer survivor. I'm like, oh my God, I have a headache. Do I have brain cancer? And I'm like, I'm not a cancer survivor. So I just can't even imagine the constant fear. Maybe that's something you can touch on, or how you work through that.
I will touch on that. And I think that we should do a separate episode just on trauma and anxiety, because there's so much to unpack there. But yes, the truth is, and I asked my doctor this too, I'm like, am I ever going to feel normal? Am I ever going to feel something in my body that hurts and not think gloom and doom, not go to catastrophic thinking? The answer is yes. The further you get away from the trauma itself, the more healing that happens. Like they say, time is healing. It's really true. But it's a process. It's a mental struggle. It's a constant, ever-changing tide. It's working on your mental health, a lot of prayer, a lot of the things. But I will touch on that for sure. So, of course, I was pronounced cancer-free after a second wave of treatment, a hysterectomy like we talked about. And honestly, after my last treatment, I was crawling barely. I started my journey, I started it really strong. I started it really strong mentally and physically, and I didn't end so strong. And I had to give myself grace that that's where I was. I remember asking my doctor after my last treatment. So I asked her, I was like, so I just go back to normal life? Feels really odd to just have been through every single day of your life. You're fighting for your life. You're focused on treatment. That's the one goal of the day, of the week. And to just all of a sudden go back to normal life, it was really hard. But you grab hold of the things that you're thankful for. You grab hold of the truth that you know. Those of you who know me and know us, you know that I'm a strong believer and my faith is my rock. I could not have done the hard stuff without Jesus, and that's just the plain and simple truth. I wash healing scripture over myself daily. Mentally, I need to get myself out of a dark space, so I'm a firm believer in scripture, positive affirmations, working on your mental health, working through the trauma. I had a friend give me a podcast recommendation, actually, by the man named Graham Cook. He has a podcast called Brilliant Perspectives, and I encourage anyone to subscribe because he's brilliant. He has the most peaceful, soothing voice. He reads scripture aloud to you. He reads positive affirmations to you. It's really helped me. Even today with anxiety, I have a lot of fears still to this day, and he's amazing. Go subscribe to him. So even post-treatment, when I was gearing up for healing from the actual treatment itself, my faith, Jesus, really pieced me back together. My family support, those months were really, really hard for me. Kathy, you guys sat with me. You loved me. Even if we didn't do anything, we just sat. And just having support around me really was healing in itself. Mm-hmm. But before I talk about the physical recovery, the mental recovery, I knew that I needed to do something immediately because I was getting to the point of being in such a dark place that I couldn't function. And that was scary. I knew I needed to put the trauma to the back of my brain so that I could put one step in front of the other, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You needed like an actionable thing to do.
Yes. I was like waving the flag. It was like, I need a tangible somebody to step in who knows what they're doing and help me because I can't even walk. So while I knew the truth, I knew I was healed. I just needed a lifeline. So my doctor, my oncologist, she really gave me confidence. She reassured me that, it's okay to ask for help. You've been through a lot. Give yourself some grace. But she recommended a psychiatrist and a therapist who specialized in EMDR therapy. I had never heard of it then. It stands for eye movement desensitization. I can't even say that word. And
desensitization?
Thank you.
Desensitization.
It is such a big word. And reprocessing. So reprocessing was the big word for me that stood out. I researched more, and you can do your own research, on the side about this, but it's great for people who have gone through trauma. It basically takes the trauma that's in the forefront of your brain, the fears, and moves it to the back of your brain. And I'm not a scientist or a psychiatrist or a therapist, so you're going to have to use Google to give you all the deets about this. But
I remember you saying like you would have to process those days, like those hard things, and you would say it out loud until it got easier and right, or like less details. Like when you go through trauma, you generally remember, and you've said this, like you generally remember what you were wearing, the smells, the weather outside. Like you remember these really specific details because you're all of a sudden your
Hmm.
adrenaline is so high because you're in this life-saving, like chemical thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So, right? Like, doesn't this
Yeah,
whole process minimize some of those things and make it feel less traumatic?
right. It feels, so it's a process where you recall distressing images. Like you visually recall the images and you speak out loud and you recall the moments that gave you the trauma.
That's hard.
It's really hard. So I did 8 weeks of this. They recommend, 8 to 10 weeks of this. I kid you not, it was a lifesaver for me. The first couple weeks, they always tell you it's going to be the hardest because you have to mentally go back to that place. So specifically for me, my moment was when they told me my cancer came back. So I had to tell her what the nurse was wearing, how the hospital smelled, how I remembered the shoes I was wearing, how I remembered mom being there. All the specific details that you really do remember, you have to verbalize them. And all while you're doing that, it's like your eyes are following this light. I know that sounds so silly, but do your own research on EMDR therapy because it's fascinating. And after a few weeks, it's really wild how this happens. It teaches your brain how to rewire certain traumatic events. So it was crazy, Kathy. By the time I got to week 7, I was barely recalling certain moments.
That's so
The
crazy.
details were like fuzzy. I wasn't thinking about them. I would wake up and have a whole day where I didn't think about my cancer or the journey or the trauma.
It's like
And
erasing your memory, which is so cool. It's like when people go through bad breakups or
yeah,
like, I wish I just
it
could
took,
forget. And it's like a way to do that. That's
I know, I was like, are
crazy.
they giving me a lobotomy? Um, but I mean, you don't forget. Here's the thing, you don't forget trauma,
Right.
but it rewires this part of your brain where it's like your fight or flight mentality kind of goes away. It's like telling your brain that after I recalled the memories, I would have to put, visualize myself putting the memories in a box and burying the box and like putting dirt over the box. And you kind of make it your own, but you visualize this over and over again. And there's some scientific way where the memories are buried, so to speak. Anyways,
It's so wonderful. It's
we won't
incredible.
talk.
Again,
It's
the
incredible. Yeah,
magic of science and research and brain health. And I am just am blown
hmm
away and grateful for resources like
I
that,
know. We need to have somebody on that like a
especially for
therapist or
people.
a specialist in the EMDR because it really is fascinating. But that really helped me a lot. Obviously, normal counseling, normal therapy, all of that I would highly recommend. And I do that as well. So, but writing really helped me. Writing, yes,
Yes.
that helped me. Meditating. The biggest thing for me when I was told I had to go back to normal and you put your life back together, I just had this moment where I was like, what do I want my life to be? My life before was really hectic. I didn't have much balance in my life. And I knew going forward, I wanted to create a life of balance. I wanted to create a life of healing. I wanted to do things that made me happy and brought me joy. And so that kind of restructuring, having the time to heal from treatment and kind of getting this second chance at what you want your life to be, it was really therapeutic and healing for me to kind of rediscover what made me joyful, rediscovered, things that I needed to create balance in my life.
I do remember that even in treatment, when you were in treatment, you were painting and writing, and
Mm-hmm.
these are things you hadn't done and made time for
Mm-hmm.
in years. And it was like your outlet and kind of the only thing you had energy for. And so
Mm-hmm.
I do think when we're thinking about physical recovery, we're like, oh, you had cancer, you're physically recovering. We often forget the emotional time and
Mm-hmm.
also just like the rest. Like rest is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me and you, and I'm sure people listening, like rest is always the really hard thing because when you're done with all of that, you're like, okay, time to get back to life. And you
Right.
can't do that. Like you can't do that after what you went through.
Oh, I couldn't. And it's funny that you said that because now in this phase of life, we have a lot of people that are going, wow, you guys are starting a podcast, you're working, you're painting, you got your real estate license, you're doing all these crazy things, like you're doing everything. How
Yeah.
are you doing it all? And
You are
I'm
doing
like,
a lot, by the way.
I am doing too much. And I told mom this, I'm like, when you've spent a year in bed
Yeah.
and then spent almost a year after that recovering in bed, it's almost like this seize the day moment. And yes, I am creating more balance. I have to say no to some things. I'm cutting back on certain things
Well,
that
it's a
but
constant process for
it,
most people.
yes, I mean, everybody goes through that,
Yeah.
right? But the rest thing, like you said, is so important. And it was important for me. Now I'm in a place where I feel strong again. I can do more things. But it was really important for me right after treatment to not feel like I had to throw on my shoes and, just hit the ground running. It was really, my doctor was great too, to just give me good advice on resting and being gracious with myself and giving myself time to heal. It was nice to rest in that.
That's great.
So,
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, that's one reason it's so important. It's often put on the back burner. Sometimes I will work with people who are eating right and exercising, but they're still
mhm.
struggling with their health, whether it be, headaches or weight loss or fertility, like whatever. And it's like they're eating right and exercising, but the one thing they aren't doing is resting.
Mm.
It's so, or managing their stress. And that's such a hard thing to do. Like, it's like, manage your stress. Okay, good job. It's like,
Yeah.
there's like, you do have to have some actionable things to do. And that's another topic for another day. But
No, I feel like the people listening are like, okay, well, what are the tools to manage stress?
well,
You know?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a couple things you've already said are so important.
Hmm.
Like you were finding things that you could do that brought you joy and brought you life and helped you feel like you were moving forward,
Hmm.
like painting and writing, that were not necessarily go, go, go. Like your body didn't feel under stress. Because sometimes our minds will feel good, but our body feels under stress.
Hmm.
It's like, I know
Yeah.
everything's going to work out. I know I'm healed, like you said, but your body still feels attacked. So our bodies are really smart. Like our body's main goal is your survival. So
Yeah.
if we're constantly going and running and going from work to conference call to lunch with friends and then late nights and caffeine and sugar and all these like stimulants,
Right.
then our body feels under stress. Even exercise to an extent, like high intensity exercise is a form of stress. So sometimes we just have to make time for good quality sleep. We have to do anything we can do to our body to say, you are safe. So
Exactly.
basics like limiting caffeine, limiting sugar and other stimulants, getting good sleep, making time for things that you enjoy, not
Hmm.
doing a ton of high intensity exercise all the time, but also including rest days and low intensity days and doing things that help your mind and your creativity and your relationships and your emotional health. Like it's
Hmm.
never just nutrition and exercise. I love nutrition and exercise. That's my degree and my passion because it does give you tangible things to do in a waiting process. Like,
Hmm.
okay, Sarah feels weak. Let's make sure she's getting enough, B12 and
Hmm.
iron. And like, we'll talk about those things. And exercise, it gives us blood flow and does help stress management. Like, those things are helpful, but if we're doing them by themselves, it's not enough.
Totally agree. If you're like me and a doer and just always feel like I hold myself to this pressure of I always have to be doing.
Yeah.
So now that I'm recovered, so to speak, physically, I have to remind myself that my body has still been through a lot. My body is still, it still needs that rest. It still needs that time to heal and have a full night's sleep and take
Yeah.
days off.
And
Anyway,
it
so
hasn't been, I mean, it's been, you're almost at 2 years cancer
two
free. So
years.
it's
Yeah.
not
So it
that long.
hasn't
It hasn't
been,
been that long.
I know I love my doctor. We were talking on the phone, and she was like, this still is a fresh wound. Like, give yourself grace. Like, you're your own worst critic. Like,
Yeah.
take time off. But kind of piggybacking on what you were talking about physically,
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about healing mentally and the things that I was trying to do, but physically, I needed a lot of healing. I'd been through so much chemotherapy The side effects, oh, the side effects were horrendous. This is gross probably, but I had this crazy rash. I don't even know if it was a rash. It was like discoloration of my skin of the whole
Oh,
back.
I forgot that.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Everything. So it went away after treatment, but I think that some of the things I did kind of it sped up kind of that lymphatic drainage, all getting all of that chemo out of my body. I just really wanted to. I needed the chemo. It cured my cancer, but it did have a lot of side effects, and I needed to like heal my body from that.
Can I say one thing about your chemo being like toxic?
Sure.
I would always just, we kind of joked about it when you were in the hospital, but your nurses would
Hmm.
like glove up and get their like hazmat suits on to like give you the chemo because the chemo bags would say like toxic, don't touch.
It had like a skull and crossbone
It
or
literally
something. Do you remember
did.
that? We were like, okay, do I need to be in a hazmat suit? Just
It's
like putting it straight in my
they're putting
vein.
it straight into your veins, and we were like, why is she's gloving up like, and she's like putting on her robe and everything.
Yes, I'm like,
This is before
COVID.
COVID, so people weren't usually masked up with their protective gear on. Anyway,
Yeah, I remember being like, "Hey, that's like going into my actual body." So I
it's
think
not
if you
funny,
get
but
some on your hand, it's not funny. It's not funny at all, actually.
it's not,
So
but
we have to laugh at this point. Okay.
we would laugh in the moment because I think it helped. Again, laughter is part of healing for sure. But
We did have to laugh.
you were like,
Yeah.
you knew because of all of that you had put toxins in your body, it had helped, and now you needed to rejuvenate. So continue. Sorry.
Yes, and I mean, not you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand the side effects of chemo are really hard. So my body was anemic almost the whole time. I had two blood transfusions towards the end of my chemo. I was in bad shape, but I knew that little by little I needed to kind of re-nourish my body. Kathy, you helped me a lot with diet and certain things. But throughout my treatment, I was a big fan of juicing. I got on the medical medium protocol train. I was on the back bandwagon. I still am. I used a lot of plants to heal certain organs. Liver rescue. I don't know if anyone else is on the medical medium train, but the liver rescue book is incredible. Everyone should have it. But I was a big fan of the juicing regimen. When I was really sick and nauseous over treatment, I needed the Zofran, I needed the carbs. I just let myself take a break from juicing. There were certain times of the treatment when I couldn't juice, but post treatment, I really was a huge fan. I tried to do it twice a day. I know that's pretty aggressive, but if you'd been through what I've been through, you probably would have done the same thing. But I was a big fan of the juice. I did 8 ounces of celery juice. And then late afternoon, I would do the 8 ounces of celery, parsley, cucumbers, beets, ginger, lemon, carrots, and apples. That was kind
Yum.
of it's really delicious. And juicing is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of washing and cleaning. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a big process. So, still to this day, I have to give myself a little bit of grace when I'm like, shoot, I don't have time to juice. I try to do like a grab and go.
I
It's
remember you
worth
doing the celery juice, and I was like, ugh.
it's that's not that tasty. If you add apples, it's a little bit more. I mean, they say drink the celery juice on an empty stomach, but no, I needed all the nutrients.
Yeah.
So I added all the things. And
Well, and
mom,
again, this is like, it's something that you could do and be productive with and actionable with
yeah,
in that time where there's not much else you could do. So
I
it's another
know
reason all this is so
that
important.
exactly. And that's something too, like I felt like I was contributing to my health. And
Yeah.
what we had talked about in the last episode, how I felt so out of control. When I was juicing and doing all the things, I knew that I was putting nourishing things back into my body. And that in itself was healing. As far as exercise go, I mean, I didn't jump back into a crazy workout routine. I walked in the sunlight and that was enough, you know. And then one day the walking turned into running, running turned into Pilates and workouts and stuff. But, I really, like you said, Kathy, I just really tried to rest. Speaking about diets, and Kathy, you might have some things to say about this. Remember when I was first diagnosed and I was like, okay, this is crazy. I'm going to be a vegetarian. I need to heal my body. I can do this. And then I became like crazy anemic where like I had no energy and it was like really bad, really
Yeah.
bad.
I'm going to tell
Um,
people that I still have to remind her, you guys, to eat meat.
I
Now,
know.
it's
And
not for
there's
everybody, and it's okay to have a lot of vegetables and still be
Yeah.
plant-based and have protein. But like sometimes
You're
like your body was telling you needed it in that
my
time.
body, and yeah, and you're a big advocate on the meat. And this is a controversial topic, okay? So there's a lot of like diehard plant-based people, like diehard vegans, all the things. But my body specifically, I was so anemic. I wasn't getting enough protein, and that was the biggest thing. Once I added back protein in my diet, like meat, I mean, specifically grass fed and all the things, Kathy, you can probably talk to that. I felt so much better. And it's not like all of a sudden I was eating all this meat. I wasn't. I just was adding it back in a little bit here and there. And I think that that was helping my B vitamins, is help giving me more energy because I was still mostly plant based. But yes, adding a little bit of that, meat protein back into my diet was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I think because once I didn't say too much when you were in treatment because again, it was something that you felt passionate about and it gave you some
Hmm.
control. So I was like, you do you, girl.
Yeah,
And
that's what I needed to hear.
I feel that about most people. I'm like, if you feel your best not eating protein, do that until it doesn't work for your body. So like, I think that we just have to be flexible. And I've
Hmm.
said this in other episodes that sometimes something works for somebody and it doesn't work for you, or it works in a season and it doesn't work in another season. I'm a
Hmm.
big advocate of eating a plant-based diet. So most meals should have some plants in them. And then if I do work with vegans, I usually try to encourage them to consider including eggs and fish at least,
Hmm.
just to get some omegas and some good healthy fats and some things,
Fish, yeah.
iron and yeah, fish and eggs, things that we know we don't get from plant foods, or at least we don't absorb as well. But again, like during your treatment, that gave you energy and health and purpose. And then your body was telling you, I needed something else. And we added back in
Yeah, you
some
make
meats.
adjustments.
You just have to make adjustments. Again, like that may not work for somebody else. Somebody else may feel best vegan until they don't. And then usually they need to make an adjustment. And sometimes it's just a season. So
Yeah. But whole foods, fruits and vegetables, I mean, if that's the majority of your diet, like that's A
you're good to
plus. I mean,
go.
you're going to be good to go. So, as far as my, recovery goes, food and rest really helped me. I needed to work on those two things. Also, just tangible support of my doctors. I had fellow cancer survivors that were huge encouragements to me, but my friends and my family were really everything. Hey guys! So we love this podcast. We really hope you do too. This is a great way to share our story. And if you have a few minutes to rate us or review us, we would be so grateful.
Yes, we are supported by you, our friends and our listeners. You have heard me mention my favorite high quality vitamin company before, Seeking Health. I have been a fan for a really long time. So when they reached out, I kind of geeked out. So anytime you guys purchase your vitamins and supplements through our affiliate code, you are supporting the Talk to Me Sister podcast. All of that information is in our show notes, but Seeking Health is also offering you guys a 10% off promotion off your next order. Use the code SISTER10 to get 10% off. That's SISTER and the number 10.
That's awesome. Okay, so you guys, you want quality vitamins. Remember that. Don't waste your money, whether you're buying their optimal prenatal or active folate or the probiotics. These are numero uno.
They're the best. They also have a genetic test kit that you can purchase on their website and do at home. It's a saliva test. It is a roadmap for your health and guides you at what supplements are best for your specific DNA. And it can help tell you what's contributing to your chronic health conditions and tell you what to do about it. So it's amazing.
And so, guys, this code won't expire. So if you're listening to this at a later date, no worries at all. So go get some quality vitamins, start feeling the benefits, start feeling better.
That's Seeking Health, Sister10 to get 10% off.
Thanks so much. Kathy, we talked about this a little bit before offline about the questions we always get throughout the week. If someone's recently diagnosed, how can I support them as a loved one? And we might do another episode just on this topic. And I get this asked a lot. I have somebody text me every other week saying, hey, someone just was diagnosed or they're going through a difficult time or whatever it may be. How do you think I should best support them? Can you send me some tools? And I get that question a lot. And that's why Kathy and I kind of want to do an episode about it. What are your thoughts, Kathy, as walking through all this with me? Like, what is your best support as far as your healing and how you helped me heal and how you can support a loved one going through a
Yeah,
difficult time?
I think you're right. I think it's whether your loved one or friend is going through cancer, whether they're going through another hard time, whether it's fertility or other sickness or a breakup, or this is a silly one, but it's not about my dog. We just have to put my dog down.
It's not
And
silly.
I know,
Silly at
I
all.
know. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cry about her. It's so silly.
No, don't know. I know, Kathy, it's not small. Nothing's too small. Rilo is a family member, and people listening that have had dogs for many, many years know that they're a part of the family.
Yeah, we can edit this
So,
part out.
no,
But
it's okay.
I was gonna say
No.
one thing that
Yeah.
one of my friends just did was like bring over some kind of like, I haven't opened it yet because I didn't want to cry before our episode,
Yeah.
but I did. So, but
It's
anyway, she
okay.
brought over this like pet memorabilia like rock thing that we could make,
Oh,
and I was like thinking about the things that people did when you were sick for
yeah.
you and for me, and it was often like I think one of our cousins who lives in town came and
Hmm.
dropped paper goods on your front steps. And I remember
Mm,
going, "Oh my God, this is so great." Because there was sometimes where we would make food, even Charlotte was little, and I would like make her lunches to send her lunches to school.
mm-hmm.
And somebody just stopped and put paper goods, like plates, napkins, cups, and didn't say anything, didn't,
I know it's
need
always,
anything.
yeah, it's
It's,
always like the quiet. I mean, people just come out of it's just it almost makes me cry because it's like
I
people
know.
come out of the woodworks
Oh,
and just
yeah.
are there for you. And it can be the silliest thing. It could be, I always think about
It can be
I've
putting your
talked about
dog down. Like it's just those
yeah.
things that I felt so
Hmm.
moved that someone would think to do that and not come in and just set it on my front porch. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a sweet thing. So,
Such
like
a
you said, it's often like the quiet, gentle, I love you actions that I
mhm.
remember from you being sick that helped me as well.
And coming from somebody who went through it, people would always ask me like I feel like I want to do more for you. How can I help you? I'm praying for you. And honestly,
Like you couldn't say what you needed.
I didn't really know how to vocalize what I need, but sometimes just a simple, sweet, even if they just texted me, a simple emoji, a heart, I love you, I'm thinking of you. I can't imagine what you're going through. I'm thinking of you today. You are loved. I'm encouraging you today. Like something small. They didn't have to bring me a huge meal. They didn't have to like give me gifts. They didn't even
Yeah.
have to come to the hospital because honestly, I couldn't even function to talk to people. I didn't even want them. But just knowing that that emotional support was there, knowing I was going to, people were praying for me, sending me scriptures, all those things
Yeah.
really, really helped me. Obviously, when people brought me meals and everything, like we've talked about, moms going through cancer is really, really tough because as
Yeah.
moms, you want to be the fixer, you're the one that cooks the dinner, you want everybody to be happy. And
Well,
when the mom's down, it's like
yeah. That's what I was going to say
you
that I
feel
felt
guilty.
like I could help with as a family
Yeah.
member. Like, I think the biggest thing you can do is be actionable, like make Charlotte's lunch. Like, I didn't want you to have to ask me to do anything. I was like, what would
Hmm.
Sarah do? She would like wipe her kitchen
Yeah.
cabinet. Someone else wipe her kitchen cabinet,
Yes.
or like, what
What
would
is, yeah.
Sarah do? I'm going to go put gas in her car. Or like, just trying to, because there's something about being the mom and the wife of the house that
Hmm.
you do these things, and then if you made a whole list of all the things you did through the day and tried to get somebody else to do them, you would just always feel behind. So I think as a family member or a friend, like those are things you can do. Like you said,
Yeah.
the texting, I think, or and just like not asking, how are you? Or what can I do? Like just do it. Just be hands and
Yes.
feet. Like
That's a
don't
big
ask.
I'm so glad that you said that because asking like that was overwhelming to me for people to say, how can I help you? Like, I want to be there for you. I didn't even know, but I appreciated the people that just didn't ask. They left it on the doorstep. They sent me the text. The people that were just like showed up and like without question, they just showed up. And
Yeah.
that was what I think really meant the most to me. It was interesting going through something like that at first because I think it almost the people that were silent, I know like some people didn't really know what to say to me. They knew I was going through a hard time. They didn't know what to do, but saying nothing at all was almost worse. Like
Right.
I had a friend reach out when I was first diagnosed after a couple weeks and she was like, "You know what? I've, been hesitant to text you because I really don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say at all, but I just love you." And that was enough.
Mm-hmm.
That was enough.
Yeah.
She didn't have to say the perfect thing, but just to say something.
That's the other thing I was going to say is also affirming me. Like when someone would
Mhm.
say, I can't believe this is going on. I'm sure it must be so hard. I love
Mhm.
you. And that's it. Like affirming the situation is just awful. Like affirming this must be really hard. I don't
Right.
know what to do, but I'm praying for you. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you. That's all I need. Like, I don't even have the energy to pray. I don't even know what to say out loud to God right now, except for
Yeah.
help. So,
I was talking to Miney, our grandmother, for those listening, battled uterine cancer during the same time I was battling a uterine type cancer. So it was kind of wild,
wild.
but it skipped a generation. But my grandmother, I mean, Kathy will say this too. She's like the wisest woman and she's like our everything.
She
And we
is.
talk all the time. And hopefully we got to get her on the podcast,
We're going to
one,
go
because she's
visit,
hilarious.
put her up
But
on the mic.
I can't wait for that day. But she would tell me, I would say, what can I do to help my anxiety? What can I do to help my fear? I can't function. I'm so fearful. And she's a woman of faith too, but she said the same thing. She was like, sometimes I don't know how to pray. I just call out to Jesus. I say, help.
She's real
She
country.
says,
Help.
she says, I say,
Help
help,
me. Bless
help
her.
me.
Makes me
But
sad.
I know she's so sweet. But yeah, I think that, I mean, sometimes you don't even know how to help yourself and you don't even know how to help other people, but just showing up, being present, saying something, doing the quiet servant kind of things like you were saying is speaks louder than a lot of words.
I have one more
So,
thing to say about that.
okay.
So I'm listening to the Bible recap and I'm plugging it because it's fantastic. It's also a
Ooh.
podcast. It
Uh-huh.
helps you read the Bible in a year. I have learned more listening to like that 6 minutes every day that I have in a really long time. And
Mm.
anyway, just like in terms of Bible interpretation, so someone who has been a believer for a long time and read those scriptures, it's like you kind of know what you're reading. And so it's nice to have a new way of looking at it. So anyway, we were reading through Job, which is just like a brutal book. When I think about Job, all that book is, so I thought, was about Job's misery. Like he of course overcame in the end, but in the beginning he like loses his family, all of his kids, his wife, his home, his job, his
Mm.
crops. Like he just has a really just the worst situation you can ever imagine happens to this man. Of course, at
Mhm.
the end, God redeems and he has a new family and, everything. But you don't know that going through it. You're like, oh, God, the kid,
Yeah,
SOS.
you're like, I literally, yeah, I'm like, I can't read this.
I
I'm
can't
just so
read it. I
sad.
know.
How does it end? Please tell
I
us.
know. The one thing I learned from Job from like for a while, I've heard this, but I was like, now, when you go through things in your life and then you read something again and you're like,
Hmm.
oh, the Job is actually about how to help people who are going through.
Yeah,
So
yes.
what
Yeah.
happens is after all this crap hits the fan and Job's family's gone and he has like three friends who come and sit with him for 7 days and they don't say anything. And I'm pretty sure that's how like the Jewish tradition of, I want to say Shiva. where people sit in Shiva.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
so I'm pretty sure that's where that came from. But anyway, his friends come for his 3 days and they mourn with him. They sit in silence for 7 days. And all of this is going well. Job is feeling comforted. He's feeling not alone. And then after 7 days, his friends start to say things. And man, they just mess it up. They're like, oh, God told me this and that. And they start giving him advice.
Mm.
And it's clearly, they say, oh, God told me this. And it's clearly not of God, this advice.
Yeah.
And so it made me think, it just reminded me of what people need is your presence. They don't need you to
Mm-hmm.
say anything. They don't need you to give advice. And I remember when you were sick, I had people send me stuff about wild cancer treatments in Mexico and this and that and the other. And I couldn't even look at it. I was like, I can't, y'all stop sending advice and recommendations and supplements and treatment options. Sarah is doing that. We are doing that. Sometimes you just need people to be present and silent and love on you, because the moment,
Mm.
even in scripture, these people started giving advice and just really
I love,
botching it.
yeah.
And I was
Yes.
like, this is so real.
This is so real to this day because, first of all, I love that because I'm not trying to compare myself to Job because, Lord, poor Job.
Yeah.
But I feel that on like a deep level because when I just had the friends that didn't say anything, they didn't need to give me advice, they didn't need to tell me anything special, they didn't ask me questions, they just sat with me and they were just there. And they were just there for support. They went on a walk with me and just, it was like a comfortable, like, like warm blanket. And I so feel that. That's so important. Going back to the advice thing, I remember when I was first diagnosed, yeah, I even had people being like, have you heard of this crazy cancer treatment? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? And that was overwhelming to me because I felt like I had already decided, me and my oncologist were like, my specific cancer was very chemosensitive. There was very good facts and results about this chemo regimen. I trusted it and I believed it. And you know what? For me, I had no other choice but to believe it was going to work. The mental part of me believing that that treatment was the right plan for me was just as important. I couldn't get bogged down with what people were saying to the right and to the left of me. I couldn't believe that, oh, this might not work because I should have done the treatment in Mexico or whatever. Like I had to kind of trust that God had this brilliant doctor for me, and I had to trust that this path that I chose was the right one. I mean, that was so important. So I
It
really
was.
valued.
Look at you now.
I know, I
Boom,
know.
boom.
One thing I didn't mention throughout healing was cannabis and RSO oil, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't really tell my doctor I was going to do this, but I partook, no, in that some. And
Just some
it,
miracle marijuana, you guys.
actually, I will say that I took it in the hospital and they didn't even blink an eye. Chemo made, I mean, it was the only way I was able to sleep. And honestly, it was a miracle plant. And we can do I actually want to do a whole podcast episode just on cannabis and
I would love
RSO.
to learn more on. Can you tell us what RSO is? I don't know. I
So
don't remember.
RSO is Rick Simpson oil.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And you can Google it. And there's actually a lot of stories out there where people have healed cancer and certain diseases that they have had on the cannabis oil or RSO.
I believe it.
Anyways, that is not the regimen I chose. I mean, I chose conventional medicine, but I did rely on it to battle side effects and sleep and, physically heal. And I'm a firm believer in that plant. I'm one of those people. So we should do a whole episode on just that because it's fascinating. And cannabinoids are,
Powerful,
it's
yeah.
pretty powerful.
Well, I
But
think that's a really good example. Maybe we can end here. A good example
mhm,
that you doesn't have to be one thing that you go, like you can walk the line of Western medicine and Eastern medicine and plant-based and diet and
mhm,
nutrition and juices and cannabinoids and all of the things, of course, ask your
mhm.
doctor, do all the things, but it's often not just one line of treatment that is beneficial. And there's just even the mental benefit of having all of those things on your side it's
Yeah.
just hope. It's more hope.
It's more hope. You got to get it from all the places. And you always say, Kathy, be your own advocate. And those were some ways I could be my own advocate during a time that felt really scary. So, we hope that you found this a little bit encouraging. Feel free to email us, ask us questions. We would love to answer emails.
Our
Questions.
email will be in the
Yes,
show notes. It's talktomesister@gmail.com and talk to the number 2 me sister at gmail.com. So if you have questions or anything you want us to cover, but other ways to connect with us will be in the show notes.
Yeah. So thank you for listening today.
Thank you, guys. We know that these topics can be a little heavier, but they're so important to address. I think I hopefully it was insightful for people who are walking through hard things with people, or healing on their own journey.
Exactly.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. This is the platform that we use to record and produce our podcast.
Guys, we are not tech savvy. I was so overwhelmed thinking about how to start a podcast, but we knew that it was the best and easiest way for us to share our story. And Anchor has been so easy to use and really intuitive for anyone, no matter how comfortable you are with podcasting or technology. They simplify it for you.
So you can record your episodes, add music, activate sponsorship, and distribute your podcast to Apple, Spotify, and all other listening platforms, all through Anchor.
So download the Anchor app for free or visit anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started.
Have fun.